Consider supporting Archaeosoup on Patreon for as little as $1 per month. Link available in the video description. Did you know? Does anyone else remember that meme that 2016 was one of the worst years imaginable? I mean, honestly, we didn't know we were born. How cute were we back in 2016? 2020 so far has been a genuinely challenging year for so many people. It began, if anyone remembers, with serious talk of World War III, though that was quickly eclipsed by the global pandemic, COVID-19, which led to shortages of basic household goods in supermarkets. And now we're seeing the US president deploy the military against his own citizens. And of course, the crucial Black Lives Matter protests. 2020 has seen a shift in so many of our day-to-day priorities, and that's to be expected. At the moment, we're not having our basic needs met. Physical and emotional safety is something that's not to be taken for granted. And yet, history reminds us that some remarkable people were incredibly productive during lockdown due to pandemic. Shakespeare wrote King Lear during an outbreak of bubonic plague, and in another outbreak of bubonic plague, Sir Isaac Newton refined his notion of gravity. It's enough to make normal people who worry a lot, like me, feel positively guilty that we haven't done more with our time during lockdown. However, I do take comfort in the fact that there is one great achievement that us regular, non-genius, normal people achieved precisely because of a pandemic. And that is the humble British pub. The mid-14th century saw Black Death come to Europe. Globally, the pandemic claimed between 75 and 200 million lives, and in Europe the death rate sat at around 66%. The social and economic impacts were catastrophic and changed society forever. Closer to home, in Britain, the death rate was around 50%. Nonetheless, graveyards were overwhelmed, priests charged for last rites, and across society, people were traumatized. However, there were other effects. Labour was scarce, for so many had died, and so wages started to rise in order to attract people to work the land. Formerly fixed, fairly stable manorial economies started to fragment as labourers left in search of better pay elsewhere. With better pay came disposable income, and alehouses sprung up across the country. Brewers rose to meet the demand and transformed what had been a cottage industry into something which provided a public space, public houses indeed, where people could expressly meet to socialize and consume ale, and play games like Skittles, for example. And so for centuries, right up to modern day, the pub has been at the heart of local communities across the United Kingdom. Indeed, today, the date of recording being the 9th of June 2020, it is a key question in the British media. When will the pubs reopen following easing of lockdown measures due to coronavirus? We are living in remarkable times, and though not unique human experiences, the way in which pandemics, for example, interact with the modern world is largely unprecedented. But history reminds us that even the darkest clouds have a silver lining. In the case of 2020, business leaders, for example, are urging government to encourage green recoveries as the economy comes back to life. And we have seen a global outpouring of support for crucial civil rights movements such as Black Lives Matter. So, the plague led to pubs. Human history is the story of change, and sometimes we see that change more acutely than ever. It can be painful, it can be frustrating, but something good, something we can scarcely imagine ever having lived without, almost certainly comes out of these moments of change. For example, I can hardly imagine playing Dungeons and Dragons were it not for the existence of the tavern. Now, where's my dice?